Welcome to Creativity Cafe for another edition of Intellectual Adda. I'm your host, Dr. Moin. In my previous Intellectual Adda with Admiral Akhter, we explored one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements, quantum mechanics. We discussed uncertainty, reality, artificial intelligence, and the remarkable discoveries that have transformed our understanding of the universe. Today, however, I would like to take our conversation one step further. Physics has changed the way we understand nature, but can it also inspire the way we understand organization, leadership, and civilization? To explore that possibility, I am delighted to welcome back someone whose career bridges engineering, naval leadership, higher education, and scientific inquiry, who has published over 250 articles in international journals and over 10 books available on Amazon. Rear Admiral Dr. Akhter Hossain has commanded ships, led major naval shipyards, supervised complex engineering projects, served as Assistant Chief of Naval Staff Material of Bangladesh Navy, and now serves as the Vice Chancellor of Bangladesh Maritime University. But perhaps what makes him truly unique is that while many engineers study machines and many admirals command ships, he spends his evening reading Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, Stephen Hawking, and Michio Kaku, asking questions that lie far beyond engineering, shipbuilding, maritime operations, and naval warfare. Admiral, welcome once again for Creativity Cafe.
Thank you, Dr. Moin, and your wonderful audience.
Thank you very much, Admiral. It's always a privilege to have you in this intellectual Adda. But let's get our business first. First thing first, let me start with your career. Admiral, your career has taken you from designing ships to leading institutions. It's more like a story. Engineers often focus on understanding individual components, whereas leaders must understand entire organizations composed of people, culture, technologies, and changing environment. Looking back across your professional journey, how has your understanding evolved from engineering machines to leading complex human system, Admiral?
It's a nice word, complex human system. That evaluation has probably been the most valuable education of our life. Engineering teaches discipline, precision, and analytical thinking. When designing a ship, every component has a clearly defined purpose. If one system fails, engineers investigate the cause, repair it, and restore the vessel's performance. The relationships between components follows physical and principles that are remarkably reliable. Leadership, however, introduced me to a very difficult or different kind of system. People are not machines. Organizations are not a mechanical structure. Human systems are dynamic, adaptive, and constantly changing because people learn, innovate, disagree, and influence one another in ways that cannot always be predicted. During my years leading naval projects and later educational institutions, I realized that success depends less on controlling individual parts and far more on understanding the relationships between those pairs. Communications, trust, shared purpose, and organizational culture often determine outcomes more than formal structure. Engineering taught, and that taught me how systems function. Leadership taught me why systems flourish. Today, I see leadership as the art of creating conditions where every part of the system strengthens the whole rather than competing against that. What do you think?
Fantastic, fantastic, Admiral, fantastic. You just said it so well, and I could see that it's not about competing between the parts or between the projects, rather creating a symphony, creating harmony, so that one another can complement themselves. So that's kind of brings us into the realm of system thinking. So I'm going to ask you a question about system thinking. Many organizations still approach problems department by department. The businesses optimize individual functions. Government often address education, healthcare, and economy separately. Universities sometimes separate teaching from research. That's kind of the scenarios that we see actually. Yet modern society operate increasingly interconnected, as we have already mentioned. Why has system thinking become one of the defining capabilities of contemporary leadership? What do you think, Admiral?
Very intellectual question, Dr. Moin. Because almost every change we face today crosses organizational and disciplinary boundaries. When I worked in naval engineering, I learned that improving one subsystem without considering the entire vessel could unintentionally reduce overall performance. The same principle applies to institutions. Take higher education as an example. Student success depends not only on teaching quality, but also on curriculum design, well-being services, technology, research culture, industry partnerships, and institutional leaderships. Improving only one area while neglecting the others hardly produces sustainable progress. System thinking encourages leaders to ask different questions instead of asking which department is responsible. Rather, they ask how do different parts influence one another. This shift is transformative because it moves leaderships away from blame and towards understanding. The most resilient organizations are those where people recognize that they are contributing to something larger than themselves. System thinking, therefore, is not merely an analytical tool. It is also a philosophy of collaboration. When people understand their interdependence, cooperation becomes more natural, innovative becomes more likely, and organizations become significantly more resilient.
That's a wonderful answer, Admiral. I must say that I particularly like the way you put it, that philosophy of collaboration. System thinking is a philosophy of collaboration, the art of collaboration. That's really fascinating. And that's really takes us into the realm of quantum physics and try to explore how this quantum physics can inspire leadership. So we know that quantum physics transformed our understanding of the nature by revealing that reality is often far more interconnected and less intuitive than classical science suggested. You sort of addressed this part in our last intellectual Adda. While many scholars and practitioners still avoid treating scientific theories as management models, do you think that scientific discoveries can nevertheless inspire new ways of thinking about leadership and organizations? Admiral.
Ah, wonderful way of thinking. Appreciate. I believe they certainly can, but we must do so without intellectual discipline. Science explains the physical universe through observation, experimentations, and mathematics. Leadership belongs to the social science and involve human values, judgment, and behavior. We should never confuse the two. However, scientific discoveries often encourage us to think differently. For centuries, many people viewed that the world as a collection of independent objects. Modern science has increasingly revealed the importance of relationships, networks, and interconnections. Whether we examine the ecosystem, climate system, or global communications, we repeatedly discovered that individual elements rarely operate in complete isolation. The broader perspective can inspire leaderships. It reminds us that the decisions made in one part of an organization often influence many others in unexpected way. It encourages humility because complex systems rarely produce perfect, predictable outcomes. It also encourages collaboration because understanding relationship becomes more important than controlling individual components. Science does not provide ready-made leadership theories, but it can certainly expand our imagination, challenge our outdated assumptions, and encourage leaders to think more systematically about interconnected worlds they serve.
That's brilliant because you just, I think, put it very, very well when you said that that's certainly science can expand our imagination, and that matters because I can still think that I was reading Einstein, and in one place Einstein said that logic can take you from A to B, but imaginations can take you anywhere. So that's really powerful. If science can really trigger our imagination, that's kind of has huge ramification the way we see leadership today. Dear audience, through these three questions that I've asked to Admiral Akhter, we are trying to see the world differently, and that was our part one of this intellectual Adda. But let me now take you to part two, where we want to see how to lead within the complex environment. So Admiral Akhter, I'm going to ask you a new question, and it's about artificial intelligence. So you know that AI is advancing at an extraordinary pace. Algorithms increasingly make recommendations, automate decisions, and influence how organizations operate. Some even argue that machines may even eventually become better decision makers than humans in many areas. In such a world, should leadership become more technological, or do you think that should it be more human?
Very nice, Dr. Moin. It is a good way to ask a question. I believe the future belongs to leaders who understand technology deeply without allowing technology to define humanity. Artificial intelligence is an extraordinary achievement in 21st century. It can analyze vast quantities of informations, recognize patterns beyond human capability, and support faster evidence-based decision making. As someone who has spent as much of, I would say, my career embracing engineering and technological innovation, I see enormous opportunity in those developments. However, leadership has always involved far more than processing informations. Leadership requires wisdom, judgment, ethics, empathy, and responsibility. Machines, on the other hand, can calculate probabilities, but they cannot genuinely understand compassion, trust, or moral accountability, or we can say transparency. They cannot inspire peoples during uncertainty or create a shared sense of purpose. Technology should therefore augment human leaderships rather than replace it. The greatest leaders of the future will not compete against intelligent machines. Instead, they will combine technological intelligence with emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, and strategic visions. In my view, the more advanced technology becomes, the more valuable human qualities will become.
Fantastic, fantastic, Admiral. I can see that how you are differentiating the leadership or human from machines, but how you are also stressing that how they both should enmesh with each other and complement each other, and where is ultimately the magic lies. So that's very, very powerful. Let me take you to the realm of our next question, which is about leading through complexity and uncertainty. So one of the lessons we discussed in our previous intellectual Adda was that uncertainty is not always a weakness. And that was remarkable, actually. Sometimes it is simply a characteristics of reality. Organizations today operate in environments shaped by geopolitical tension, technological disruption, economic volatility, and rapid social change. How should leaders respond when certainty is impossible?
Again, very intellectual question. The first step is accepting that uncertainty is normal rather than exceptional. During naval operations, commanders rarely possess perfect information. Weather changes unpredictably. Technical problem arises. Operational intelligence evolve continuously, waiting for complete certainly before acting would often means acting too late. The same principle applied to organizational leaderships. Effective leaders gather the best available evidence and assess a risk carefully, consult knowledge colleagues, and then make the most responsible decision possible. Equally important, they remain willing to adjust when new information becomes available. This requires intellectual humility or greater humankind. By the by, the leader should never confuse confidence with inflammability. Strong leadership is not demonstrated by refusing to change one's mind. It is rather demonstrated by recognizing when adaptation serves the organizations better. Complexity, therefore, demand continuous learning rather than rigid certainty. Leaders who remain curious, open minded, and adaptable are usually far better prepared than those who believe they already possess all the answer.
Fantastic. That's very powerful. That's very powerful that leaders should not have all the answers. Rather, they should have open mind to embrace uncertainty and they seek the answers. I think what is more important is that it's not the answers that matter. What matters is the ability to ask the right question. But I think I particularly like one of the phrases that you have used while answer is this question, and I need to certainly highlight that or underscore that for our audience. You said that it requires intellectual humility. That's so powerful. And we should not confuse confidence with infallibility. That's really powerful. Let me now take you to the next stages of understanding leadership by seeing how to build organization. Those are not just organization, but they are defined by learning organizations. So you have led shipyards, major engineering projects, and how a and now a university. Although these organizations differ greatly, each depends upon people learning, adapting, and improving. In your experience, Admiral, what distinguishes a genuinely learning organization from one that merely talks about learning.
The curiosity is the main driving force. A learning organization creates an environment while curiosity is encouraged rather than feared or panic. Many organizations claim to value innovations, yet unintentionally discourage people from questioning established practice. When individuals become afraid of making mistake or challenging assumption, learning gradually slows down. Interestingly, all over my career, I have found that sustainable improvement begins with creating a culture of openness because the engineers should feel comfortable discussing design improvements. Officers should be encouraged to share operational lessons. Academics should continually question existing knowledge. And students should be inspired to explore rather than simply memorize. Learning organization also recognize that knowledge is distributed throughout the system. Valuable ideas can emerge from junior engineers, young researchers or innovator, experienced technicians or administrative colleagues. Leadership therefore involves listening as much as directing. Ultimately, institutions that continue learning remains resilient because they continuously renew themselves. So, asking continuous question and having the attitude to learn is the main thing.
Fantastic, fantastic. I particularly liked when you said that leadership therefore involves learning as much as so listening as much as learning. So listening is really, really powerful because if we don't listen or if we don't pay attention, then probably we might miss something. But I also like the way you finished saying that when organizations stop learning, often become vulnerable long before they can realize it. So not only the leaders, but also the organizations and every part of the organizations that are leaving, they should continue to learn. That's kind of I'm seeing from what you are saying. So I would like to take you to integrative leadership now, because we are just, you can see that we are sort of trying to navigate in a way so we understand this complex environment of leadership. So your career itself illustrates integration. You're an engineer, a naval architect, a military strategist, a researcher, and university leader. You also write about philosophy and modern science, which is a unique aspect of your career, I would say. So many educational systems still encourage narrow specialization, Admiral. Why do you think that future leaders must become more integrative in their thinking?
Great questions. Again, I am a nothing but a student. I want to say because real world problems do not respect disciplinary boundaries. When we classify knowledge into engineering, economics, then psychology or philosophy, we create useful academic structure. However, society itself does not operate according to those categories. Climate change involves science, economics, politics, and ethical simultaneously. Artificial intelligence raises technical, legal, philosophical, and educational questions at the same time. Throughout my own career, I have discovered that insight often emerges when different fields begin to communicate with one another. Engineering taught me analytical discipline. Military leaderships taught me strategic thinking. Higher education strengthened my appreciation for research, innovation, and lifelong learning. Reading philosophy and physics expanded my understanding of uncertainty, knowledge, and human responsibility. actually. Integrative leaderships, therefore, does not mean knowing everything. That is impossible. Rather, it means developing the ability to connect ideas, bring diverse expertise together, and create solutions that no single discipline could produce independently. In the 21st century, I believe the greatest leader will not simply be a specialist, they will become thoughtful integrator of knowledge, people, and purpose.
That's wonderful, Admiral. That's wonderful. I think for our audience, I need to explain one thing, which is that that we have designed our today's sort of episode into three parts. So in the first part, we are trying to seeing the world differently through the lens of multiple domains that is brought by Admiral Akhter from his diverse career portfolios. Then we try to understand in part two, leading complexity or leading through the complex world. Now, dear audience, I'm inviting you to part three, which is building the future. So my questions will reflect how to build the future and what is the role of leaders in that domain. So let me ask you, Admiral Akhter, the next question, which is about seeing universities as a system of civilization. So, Admiral, throughout history, universities have often been described as centers of learning. Yet, today, they are also expected to drive innovation, economic development, technological progress, and social transformation. As Vice Chancellor of Bangladesh Maritime University, how do you see the role of modern university in shaping not only graduates, but civilization itself?
Wonderful, Dr. Moin. I believe universities have a responsibility that extends far beyond awarding degrees. Their true purpose is to develop the intellectual, ethical, and innovative capacity of a nation. Every generation succeeds to challenges that previous generation could not fully anticipate, and universities exist to prepare people to address those emerging realities. Bangladesh Maritime University may provide an excellent example. We educate future citizens, leaders, entrepreneurs, lawyer, engineers, hydrographer, oceanographer, business owner, researcher, innovators, but we also contribute to national capability through research, international collaborations, and technical or technological innovations. Maritime security, blue economy, climate resilience, logistics, and artificial intelligence are no longer isolated subjects. They are interconnected components of national developments. In 21st century, I believe university should become ecosystem of knowledge where teaching, research, innovation, industry, lawmaking, national development, and public service reinforce one another. They must cultivate critical thinking rather than the passive learning, curiosity rather than conformity, and collaboration rather than disciplinary isolation. In doing so, they help build not only successful professional but also responsible citizens who understand their role in shaping the society. In many respects, universities do not simply prepare people for the future. I want to say rather they help create the future. What do you
Fantastic.
think?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I particularly liked when you said that universities should become ecosystem of knowledge. That's very powerful because it's not just a place, it's an ecosystem of knowledge. And you also highlighted that teaching, research, industry, public services reinforce one another, and that's really powerful. So what you are talking is basically, you are talking system leadership again, and you are highlighting the importance of seeing this universe as a connected system. But also you highlighted about curiosity rather than conformity. So that actually take leadership into a different realm. My next question to you, Admiral Akhter, is about stewardship, ethics, and national development. So I'm just telling the kind of areas so that it is helpful for our audience. So let me ask you the question now. You have commanded ships, supervised strategic defense projects, and now lead one of Bangladesh's most important specialist universities. Across these very different responsibilities, is there one leadership principle that has remained constant with you?
Yes, the principle is nothing but stewardships. This stewardship is a very powerful sentence and thought. Leadership is often misunderstood as authority, status, or control. My experience has taught me something different. Every leadership position is temporary, but every institution should survive the individual who lead it. Therefore, our responsibility is not merely to achieve short-term success, but to strengthen in the institution for those who follows. Whether we are managing a naval fleet or constructing a shipyard or ship or leading a university, we are custodian rather than owners. We succeed to system build by previous generations, and we have an obligation to improve them before passing them to the next. Again, the stewardship also requires ethical leaderships. A decision should never be guided solely by efficiency or immediate result. They must also consider fairness, sustainability, and long-term social impact. Technical excellence without ethical responsibility can become dangerous. Ultimately, leadership should leave behind stronger institutions, better people, and greater opportunities than existed when we first assumed responsibility. That, I believe, is the true measure of leaderships. Again, I leave the answer with the stewardship.
Fantastic, fantastic. That should be the true measure, as you said, stewardship. That's kind of the servant leadership as well, and that is also coming from the domains of various religious and spiritual traditions as well, and also purpose-centric and meaningful leadership. So that's very powerful, Admiral Akhter. Particularly, you have understood this thing. Sometimes you understand that military generals or admirals, they tend to sometimes think otherwise. Not always, I mean, obviously. But thank you very much, actually, to acknowledge leadership through the lens of stewardship. So my last but probably most significant questions of today's intellectual Adda, Admiral Akhter. If we were to ask to design a leadership development program for the next generation, for young officers, engineers, entrepreneurs, academics, and public leaders, what qualities would you place at its center? What kind of leaders will humanity need in the decades ahead?
Well, the future will demand leaders who are intellectually curious before they are intellectually certain. Knowledge will continue expanding at an extraordinary rate. Artificial intelligence will generate information faster than any individual can absorb it. Under those conditions, leadership cannot depend simply upon gathering knowledge. It must depend upon learning how to think, how to connect ideas, and how to exercise or implement sound judgment. First, I would encourage curiosity. Every major scientific discovery begins because someone asked a nice question that other had overlooked. Second, I would develop system thinking. Future leaders must understand relationships rather than isolated events because the world's greatest challenges are interconnected. Third, I would emphasize ethics and humility or greater mankind. The more powerful our technologies become, the greater our moral responsibility becomes. Wisdom, important one, wisdom must always grow alongside knowledge. After all, I would encourage lifelong learning. Leadership is not a destination reached through experience alone. It is a continuous process of reflection, adaptation, correction, and renewal. And finally, I want to say one word: honesty plays a pivotal role. We can achieve this great quality of leadership by continuous self assessment, self control, self resilience, self passion, and self development. The leader who will shape the future are unlikely to be those who possess all the answers. They will be those who ask better questions, bring diverse people together, and motivate others to pursue a common purpose. In a progressive, interconnected world, the ability to integrate knowledge with humility or humankind, and that will become one of the defining qualities of exceptional leadership in 21st century, where advanced technologies and innovation will shape the world. Thank you, Moin.
Wow, wow. What an answer, Admiral. I was simply I was so amazed and listening to your words so attentively. Sometimes I thought that I'm being lost in the realm of leadership. So it's not that you are taking us to the battlefield where complex things are cooking up, or neither you are taking us into the naval theater of operation at sea, where many kind of the forces girding the high value unit. I felt like that you are taking us at the age or at the crossroad of civilizational change and what we need to focus on. You highlighted it very, very well. I would like to tell them briefly for my audience. You started with curiosity, which is phenomenal. Then you talked about system thinking. Then you moved to ethics and humanity. It's like the story is progressing. Then you also talked about lifelong learning, and that's really, really powerful. So, Admiral, thank you for another truly thought-provoking conversation, and I really regard your wisdom and the way you answered my question for me and for my audience. Let me conclude today's intellectual Adda with a few words from me finally. Today we have traveled well beyond quantum physics. We have explored system thinking, leadership, education, technology, and the future of civilization itself. Along the way, one message has emerged with remarkable clarity. The world is becoming increasingly connected. Our institutions, economies, technologies, and societies no longer evolve independently. They influence one another in a way that requires a new kind of leadership that is intellectually rigorous, ethically grounded, and deeply human. And we could see the flavor of this kind of leadership while having conversation with Admiral Akhter today. Perhaps the greatest lesson from today's discussion is not that science provides all the answers, but that science encourages us to ask better questions. System thinking reminds us to look beyond isolated problem. Human-centered leadership reminds us that technology should always serve people. Stewardship reminds us that our greatest responsibility is not simply to manage the present, but to prepare the future. As we navigate an era shaped by artificial intelligence, global uncertainty, and unprecedented technological change, we may need leaders who are less concerned with having all the answers and more committed to continuous learning, thoughtful judgment, and meaningful collaboration. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us on Creativity Cafe. If today's conversation has encouraged you to think differently about leadership, systems, and the future, please share it with others and continue the discussion. Until our next intellectual Adda, stay curious, keep learning, and never stop exploring the ideas that shape our world. Admiral, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moin, and your wonderful audience.